Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Coal Country Podcast, where we cover everything WVU sports. I'm your host, Ian McIntyre. Joining me on the show, as always, we got Tyler Cobb, Matt Howe, and Max Remy back there behind the camera. How we doing, gentlemen?
I'm very happy to be here. How are you doing?
You know, I'm feeling good this week.
A little bit better.
A little better. Especially the big news breaking today.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we'll talk about that later. How you doing, Kizzy?
I'm all right. A little tired.
Yeah,
but
I think we're all tired, man. We're all tired. Jade, how are you?
I'm pretty all right. A little tired today. I had a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, fair. Well, yeah, that's all of us, dude. You're preaching to the choir here. All right, so we got a little bit of a packed show for you. Bunch of segments we want to cover. We're going to get to the game recap, break the big news on the coaching staff, a little bit of quarterback talk, what should be going on in that QB room. Big 12 games coming up this week. We made our own top 25 list again, so we're going to go ahead and go through that for you and argue our picks. And then
little special segment at the end.
Little special segment at the end. So I'll save it for then. So let's go ahead and recap this game a little bit. Tyler, give me a little bit of your thoughts on the game real quick, as I can pull up my stats here. Obviously, final score 31-26 in favor of West Virginia. Nicco Marchiol, 2 touchdown passes, no interceptions.
Had himself a game.
He did have himself a game.
And we'll get to the quarterbacks later.
Yeah.
But the game itself, I'm happy we won, okay? But I was scared. You watched that last quarter, and it was like, they get the ball back, I don't know if we get a stop. So it was a miracle that Nicco found Jalen Anderson on that last play, or the third down, to get the first, because I'm telling you, they had 2 possessions in a row where they scored. Teteroa McMillan was wide open on several passes, but I'm glad we came out with a victory.
Yeah, me too. Matt, I'm sure you got your own feelings on this game. Give me a little bit of your headspace here.
I was kind of worried going into it. We just have not looked super great the previous 2 weeks.
You're the only one who picked us this week.
I'm very happy with that pick. Just watching through the first quarter, I was stoked for this game. And, we held on. It was a solid game from both teams. Some issues on both ends from both teams, but it was a good game to watch.
Talking about the solid quarterback play for Nicco Marchiol, we also got to look at Noah Fifita. While his accuracy wasn't great, 21 for 32.
That's still above 50%. What is that exactly? I don't know the math.
You can do the math there. So 21 for 32. I should say it doesn't jump out off of the stat sheet, I guess is the point I was trying to make there. But he did pass for 294 yards and 2 touchdowns. But we got to give credit to Teteroa McMillan here for most of those yards. He had 10 receptions for 202 of those yards.
He's going to be, in my opinion, a top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. I mean, an absolute dog on the field. And he showed it. And so I have seen this all over the place. I've watched Coos, Paul, Carson Fox, and every single one of them has said, I don't know why any team that has, especially a team that has a receiver like Teteroa McMillan, why they wouldn't throw the ball all game long. Like, our secondary has been terrible, so I don't know why they didn't. They still managed to find him for, like you said, 202 yards, which is just crazy. I don't know why they didn't find him more.
What you got, Matt?
Yeah, McMillan had a very impressive showing. The run game for both teams was decent. Jaheim White had 12 carries, 92 yards. Conley for Arizona, 16 carries for 72 and a touchdown. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty solid offensive game from both teams. I think that's relatively high scoring from what we've seen so far in conference play.
It was right at the over-under, or not the over-under, the spread, too. Wasn't the spread -4 or something like that?
It's, every single game that we played since Albany.
It's almost always right there.
Every single game we played since Albany has had a close spread. So that wasn't surprising. We also said on the pod episode last week that we knew Teteroa McMillan was going to have himself a game, and he did. I mean, against the secondary, not the most difficult job in the world.
Well, the two that stick out are the two that obviously bad for West Virginia, but the two where Trey Lathan ended up on Tedro McMillan, like that is just bad defensive scheming. If you have a linebacker that ends up one-on-one against arguably the best wide receiver in the country, that's terrible. That is terrible defensive coaching, terrible defensive scheming. Like, you got to do better.
I agree. And we were talking earlier before we started recording about that Tampa 2 coverage.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I don't exactly get all the ins and outs of defensive coverage.
Yeah.
What I sort of know what a Tampa 2 is, but what exactly happened on that play specifically?
Well, so, like, the linebacker just has to drop back, and they almost act as, like, a safety. But still, the fact that, like, I get if you're dropping back. But at first, you just got to know that you shouldn't run that coverage, okay? But second, you should have double team on Tet McMillan all day long. All day long, there should be a double team on him, and there just wasn't. And even worse than that, it was a linebacker covering him. And I love Trey Lathan. I think he's one of the bright spots on the defense, but he's going to get beat by a receiver of that caliber all day long.
Yeah, for sure. That coverage also, yeah. When you break it down for me like that coverage wasn't the smartest idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even a casual fan who would be watching that game would be like, "What was the defense doing there?" There were multiple times, and it wasn't just McMillan either. Their tight end, I'm forgetting his name right now. I'll pull it up eventually, but he got the wide open touchdown there in the third quarter, and that sort of sparked the Arizona offense to come back towards the end of the game. And like you were saying at the beginning of the pod, man, that had me scared a little bit. I legitimately thought, I think it was about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, where we were just trying to like run and just chew clock, and we just constantly had that feeling in the back of our head, like true Mountaineer fans. That,
Yeah, please don't let this happen.
I feel like that's how we play when we lose. Is just go slow, try not to lose. Is how we lose games.
It's
instead of just keep on top of it, keep pushing.
It's Neil Brown trying to not lose games rather than trying to win games. And I know that sounds kind of dumb and counterintuitive, but like you have, what was it? 31. I don't remember what the score was exactly.
31-26 was final.
Well, no, I'm trying to think of the score at the time. I don't remember what the exact score at the time was, but you score and you're up at least, I think it was 2 or 3 possessions, and you like take your foot off the gas. Like, do what you've been doing. I think the 2 plays that kind of sparked the game for West Virginia and why we came out with it was, or 3 really, was the fake field goal and the incredible catch in the back of the end zone by Huddy Tuddy. That was a crazy catch. And the absolute dot by Nicco Marchiol to Traylon Ray on a go ball.
That was by far his best pass of the game.
Oh, yeah, by far. And so why is that play calling that you're doing to get a big lead not there late in the game? Like, I know you want to run the clock down, but you're past 18 for 22 by Nicco Marchiol. He's clearly showing you that he has the ability to pass efficiently. Why not give him the chance to shut the game down? Like, give him a chance to say, hey, Arizona, this game's over. You're not coming back. Instead, we're trying not to lose, and Arizona finds some momentum. And I thought we were having Pitt 2.0. It was like if we didn't get that first down towards the end of the game, it was literally if they get the ball back, I'm pretty sure they score and we lose the game.
And I think both of those on that last crucial drive that we had, both of those third down plays were 3rd and long.
I don't remember what the exact one was, but it was 3rd and long. And it was Jalen Anderson's first touch of the day, too. So props to Jalen Anderson for being open and getting to the first down.
Yeah, and also reiterating the positives like you talked about. The crazy touchdown catch by Traylon Ray. Managed to stay on his feet in that play as well.
Yeah, he got like tripped up. It was a heck of a catch.
We were all watching that game, and the reaction was awesome. Because we were having sort of a watch party for this game.
Yeah.
And the reaction of everybody, because they know football.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of them do know football. And they did not expect any of our receivers to be able to make that play, let alone our backup quarterback making that throw. And then you have Huddy Tuddy. That was a 4th down play.
Yeah, it was 4th and goal, and props to Neil for being aggressive there. You need to stay aggressive throughout the whole game, but props for being aggressive there. And, like, I think it was, like, in triple coverage.
Yeah.
And Nicco threw it the only place he could, and Huddy made a great catch.
Yeah. Honestly, what about our wide receiver room? Who is, like, bona fide wide receiver one? This could just be me being misinformed.
I still think it's Hudson Clement. He consistently is like the number one wide receiver. Like he's got the most consistent, I should say, and the most reliable. So the leading one in this was Traylon Ray, 2 receptions for 78 yards, and then the next highest wide receiver was Justin Robinson, 3 for 28. But Hudson Clement, he always seems like if you need the ball to be caught, a first down, touchdown, he's going to be there and you're going to find him. And so I still think it's Hudson Clement, but used right, Traylon Ray, he's there.
So, yeah, I think the same thing because you look at our receiver room and we're honestly, like, kind of stacked.
Well, I don't know if I would say stacked. It almost seems like we're always not getting separation, but.
Is that a scheme thing, though?
It could be. It could be.
But, yeah, Traylon Ray, Hudson Clement, incredible guys. Then you got Rodney Gallagher. You got Jaden Bray.
I want him so bad. Day Farmer needs to be released. Let him eat, man. He is a heck of a player. And I was watching one of Mountaineer Paul's episodes, and he said that he thinks it was the drop touchdown pass against Albany that Neil might have lost some trust in him, which is understandable. But he's a freshman, and I think out of every receiver on the team, he has the most upside.
That's a
Day Farmer can be a top receiver in not only the Big 12, but the nation if he is used properly.
I say that's a solid statement.
I stand by it. Release him, Neil Brown.
Day Farmer Enjoy. That's a new Twitter burner account.
Heck yeah. Somebody, I'm sure it's out there.
Day Farmer Enjoy. But yeah, it's kind of hard to like grade this game on a letter scale per se because you have the defensive scares and the mishaps, and then again the offense was great for the most part. So I feel like putting us at like a C would be
middle,
a little low, but I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys think.
I don't know. Arizona's not a good team, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it seems like outside of Fafita and Tetero McMillan, they've got nobody, and they're dealing with injuries just like we were. Obviously, Milam and Garrett were out for the game. I think it's a C. C is where it's at. If they would have held the lead as much as they had and wouldn't have allowed Arizona to come back, then I would probably give us a B plus. But I think it was a C.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think our pass coverage specifically brings us down a lot on the defensive end. Honestly, I feel like that was the best we've played offensively in a while. Not that it was necessarily our highest scoring game, but I mean, that's up there on the season for us. So, yeah, I think I'd also give us a C, but I feel like it's definitely the defense that brings us back.
Yeah, I feel like that was the best we played offensively since the Oklahoma State game. Even though I think the attacks in this game and that game were completely different because you have the 65 rushes in the Oklahoma State game versus Nicco throwing the thing all over the field.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you look at our rushing yards for this game, we had 203 rushing yards compared to like Arizona only had 78.
Right.
So I mean,
I think we
again
just
dominant.
We had more effective runs.
Yeah.
Because in Oklahoma State we had 300 and some yards. I can't remember the exact figure.
It was close
more.
to 400.
Yeah, it was more in this game, but the amount of rushes.
It's what happens is when you are passing the ball effectively, which we'll get into later, it opens up the run game because they still have to, like, when Kansas State or Iowa State played us, they're going to stack the box because they know we're struggling with downfield passing and our run game is key. So, hey, if you take away the run game, you've taken away the only thing that's been working. But this game, you see Nicco go in, 18 for 22 passing. He's passing consistently, and I saw some passes that I don't think Garrett can make. And you open up the run game. And so you have an efficient day on the ground. Jaheim White, 7.7 average, and CJ, 5.1 average. That's a good run.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have the high numbers in yardage, they split the carries between your runners, and you're finding a way to be efficient running the ball.
Yeah. sort of for me, I use a basketball analogy for this because, like you were saying, you throw the ball a lot, it opens up the run. In basketball, you shoot a lot of 3-pointers and you drain the threes, they're going to start playing a zone.
Yeah.
And that's going to open up the driving game and layups, which I feel like every good 3-point shooting basketball team also has a guy that's able to be physical and go in and lay the ball up, which I feel like for us is a CJ.
Yeah.
But then you look at our quarterbacks, Nicco, I think more than Garrett. Like you were saying, there are some throws that we don't think Garrett can make. Nico's that guy for us. At least he was in this game. So my analysis of this game, you have two teams that are coming off bad losses and both hungry for a win. We managed to eke it out. Arizona falls to 3-5 now, which I think preseason we did not expect whatsoever.
Well, the standings in general, I don't think we expected.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Utah down there, Arizona down there, BYU and Iowa State on top of the pile.
Oklahoma State, too. Oklahoma State was a top 3 team, and they're bottom of the barrel.
It's just so bad I completely forget about them because it seems like
It's
they're
that bad.
nowhere near the conference standings at all.
Yeah.
They're just sunk down there. Let us know what you think of the Arizona game. Leave comments. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Now we're going to get to the coaching news that happened today. So, Tyler, I'm going to let you take the lead on this one.
I woke up this morning, and I saw my phone. Jordan Lesley was fired as defensive coordinator, and it is a good move. Okay, I think we can all say we were probably expecting it. Whether you were expecting it this early or not is one thing, but Neil, I think at this point, is coaching for his job. And like I said last week, I thought if we lost this game, he would have been fired. But had we lost it in the fashion that we were about to, Pitt 2.0, where we had a large lead in the fourth quarter and they nearly came back and won it, I think Neil would have been out. And so I think Neil sees that, okay, our passing attack, which clearly is the worst part of the team, it's a problem, and it's going to continue being a problem. We managed to eke out this game, but what's going to happen in the future when we play high-scoring offenses like Texas Tech, UCF? And so it was time for Neil to make a change, and he tried it. I think at this point it's him trying to save his job. And so Jeff Kuntz takes over as defensive coordinator, which I think is a little interesting because now he's linebacker coach, special teams coordinator, and defense coordinator. So I imagine he'll give up one of the two. I'm going to assume it's the special teams coordinator, and he'll let one of the other special teams guys step up, and he'll still have control of the linebackers. And he's just interim, so I'm going to, again, assume, unless we just play shutout defense the rest of the season, that this will be a one-year thing, and we'll hire a defensive coordinator in the season. But a well-needed move. It was time to move on, and it is now Neil coaching for his job. And so can he turn the season around is the next step.
I agree. I think the move of getting Lesley out was much needed. We started talking about the removal of Lesley before we started talking about the removal of Neil Brown, which really came to a head after the Iowa State game. But even in the Albany game, people were like, man, you let Albany score 14 points on us.
Well, not even that. It was the fact that they had so many passing yards.
Right. Like, they had almost as many passing yards as we did, and they were already calling Lesley into question. So I feel like as a casual fan, you can see this as a good move. But like you were saying, when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, is it going to work schematically? It could. But you said Kuntz is coming in. Again, we don't know how he's going to be able to do. I guess we'll see for the rest of the season. Neil definitely making moves for his job.
And I don't think this is it either. I think Shadon Brown is next. And whether that's over the bye week, before, after, or if it's after Cincinnati, I don't know. But I do think Shadon Brown is next because I find it interesting that in his press conference, he is talking about the pass defense being very bad, has been very bad, and it's been bad all season, and there's no excuse for that. Yet he decides to fire the defensive coordinator, but not the secondaries coach, which is Shadon Brown. And so I think that it's just a matter of time before he also fires Shadon Brown.
When you put it like that, it could very well be the case. Matt, as a casual fan looking in, I'm not calling you a casual fan.
I
you
am.
just did.
You
I
have
am
the
a casual.
casual view. You have more of a casual view than any of us here.
I'm definitely the least versed in the inner workings of the team. So
Yeah, he knows all about that. But for you, how do you view this move overall?
well, from a casual perspective, if the defense is the thing that I think is holding us back, and I do think that, then I would say the defense needs to improve. And if that's not happening with the staff that we have, maybe we're overdue for a change. That's my short and sweet.
I hate it for Jordan Lesley because he's been one of the most loyal guys to Neil Brown. I saw earlier where he's been with Neil Brown for 10 years. So he was back with him at Troy. And so you got to imagine that that's a tough decision to make with somebody that you're friends with, you've been close friends with for a decade now. But it's college football, and results matter. And I saw earlier where this is why I think that Shadon Brown is next, and this wasn't a one-time thing. And at this point, it is Neil trying to save his job. Mike Asti tweeted out that this was a Neil decision, not a Wren decision. And so I hate it for Jordan Lesley and Neil Brown because, like I said, a relationship that goes back 10 years, that's got to be hard to kind of part ways with.
I think that shows how important of a decision it is.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I mean, they've been, teammates in the sense of working together for 10 years. That is a very large leap to make, a very large step to take. So, I mean, like you're saying,
I think we can all agree that it was the right choice.
I do think it was the right choice. We're gonna have to wait for the rest of the season to see how it ends up. I think we improve.
I wanna throw this out there because I don't think we make it. We can win out 7-2 in conference, and I don't think we win or are competing in the Big 12.
Yeah,
because we have the Iowa State and Kansas State both have the head-to-head to us, and so you'd have to have a lot of things go right. But I want to ask, because I saw this on Twitter earlier, and it was like 5 steps to, getting back on the climb, so to speak. Firing Jordan Lesley was one of them. Shadon Brown being the next step. The next step, winning out. So you finish the season 8-4, get put in a decent bowl game, which I want to talk about that as well. And you win that, so you finish 9-4, the same record last year. I don't see Neil Brown being fired in that situation. But if you win out and you win a nice bowl game, what are your all's thoughts on Neil Brown going into 2025? With the assumption that Jordan Lesley isn't the only change. Because I don't think he needs to be the only. I think there needs to be essentially an entire defensive staff overhaul outside of the D-line's coach, whose name escapes me at the moment. The D-line has been solid for many years now. And so outside of that, I think, and Jeff Kuntz, obviously, I think there needs to be an entire defensive staff overhaul. So what are your thoughts supposedly going on into 2025 with that criteria?
I think a lot of it, like you were saying, has to be defensively. Because if we win out, I trust our offense to do that. I do trust our offense to win us out for the rest of the season. It's going to be really telling on my thoughts on Neil Brown at the end of the season if we win out based on opponent score. And going back and watching some of the games, seeing some of our coverage choices, passing yard stats, I think a lot of those are going to factor into my staff thoughts, especially if we went out, but somehow our opponents are throwing for 300 yards a game for the rest of the year, that does not give me confidence.
So, well, that's why I said with the assumption that there's an entire defensive staff overhaul. Because Neil has nothing to do with the defense. So I understand that he's the head coach. He does the recruiting, all that jazz. But Neil doesn't have much to do with the defense. Schematically, not personnel-wise, but schematically and play calling, that's not necessarily on him.
That's fair. It's tough to say.
Yeah.
It is very tough to say because the way that the season has gone up to this point so far, oh my gosh.
I wish it was. I want to stop having, hey, can we turn this season around seasons and start having, hey, how how far can this team
Well, so
go?
I think that's the question. I mean, we had a whole Neil Brown episode basically before, but if you look at the losses we've had, it's been either ranked teams, which we can't win.
That's the
with,
problem.
with him as a coach.
That's the only problem.
And then the Pitt Panthers, where we
well, they're ranked.
Crapped.
Don't.
They're ranked now. They're
as
ranked
much
now.
as we don't like them, don't discount them.
At the time, we're thinking, oh, we're going to walk in and win. And even the stat line at the time said it should be a close game, and it was. But realistically, we won that game and then threw it away at the end, and that was a defensive play. So with Neil Brown, you don't win ranked games. So at the very least, we plateau where we do well, like maybe a 9-3, 8-4 season. Like that's where we're going to end up with him, unless something changes. And I think, as we've seen throughout this season, it's an attitude that he has, which is we're all going to go out and have fun. And, as long as you come and enjoy the tailgate, that's the Mountaineer football.
But could the staff changes change that? That's my question.
Well, so like I'm saying, I think defensively is where we've struggled mostly. In the games against the ranked opponents, we haven't scored 20 points. The only game at Pitt was the only game that we scored over 20 points. We lost 38-34, but that was the only game that we've lost where we haven't scored 20 points. So I don't think where we scored over 20 points. I feel like it's not typically an offensive issue. And honestly, it might just be a pressure thing when you see a number beside the opponent denoting that they're ranked. I think really we just struggle by letting other teams beat up and run over us. So I think a defensive overhaul definitely is in the books, but you can only get so far with that because I feel like the attitude at the top is not where it needs to be to push into the next frontier, so to speak.
I agree with that because revisiting the numbers from a couple episodes ago when you went on your tirade for words, 3-17 against those ranked opponents. None of our wins ended up translating to the teams finishing ranked later that season. I feel like it's a mentality thing more than anything, and that could affect the staff coming in. Honestly, that could affect the players. And so I'm definitely not right now. I'm not calling for the firing of Neil Brown, but there's a question mark over his head.
So my thing is, I agree with what you said. And the only way I feel comfortable going forward is a defensive, like we've all said, a defensive coaching staff overhaul. That needs to happen. What else needs to happen is, well, I don't want to spoil that yet, so we're going to save that. But the second thing that needs to happen is Neil needs to hand over the play calling. Because like you said, we're 3-17 against ranked opponents. But how many of those have come down to final quarter, like the final quarters? How many of them have been, hey, I'm trying not to lose instead of trying to win? And a lot of that comes down to play calling, in my opinion, especially again in the Pitt game. I think he gave up on playing aggressive way too early. And so how much of that could change by simply handing over the play calling keys to either Chad Scott, if that's who our offensive coordinator is in the future. Like I said, I don't know what else Neil Brown is going to do. That seemed like a, hey, I'm trying to save my job move, and we don't know what's next. But if it's Chad Scott, it's Chad Scott. If it's somebody else, it's somebody else. Bottom line, I don't think Neil needs to be the play caller. So that's the first two. Third, I will save because it's the next segment.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit before we move on, because I had this sort of bundled in with this segment. The billboards that have recently gone up around the Mile Ground and Sheet Lake area. I have not seen any personally, but I'm very sure that it was the same group of donors that were going to try to fly the banner over the stadium.
Calling themselves the Wolf Pack.
Okay, that's what it is.
So it was the same group.
Yeah. They say fire Neil Brown, and then they have their fireneilbrown.org.
Yep.
That you can actually visit. Before I get into my thoughts, what are your guys' thoughts? I'm curious to hear them because I haven't heard them yet.
It's a group of fans that feel very passionately about their football team and have experienced 6 years of mediocre football, and they want their opinion to be heard. I wouldn't go about it that way, but it's no different than somebody sitting on Twitter and saying, hey, we should fire Neil Brown. So it is what it is. If you disagree with it, it wasn't your decision and you didn't spend your money on it, so you can't do anything about it. That's my thoughts.
I mean, I obviously I think that's a respectable position to be in, and like you said, it's just a different form of vocalizing that opinion. So good for them for saying, here's what I stand by and standing by it.
Yeah.
So.
Whenever I first heard about the banner that was supposed to fly over the stadium, I literally thought that's kind of cool.
I thought it would have been funny.
I thought that's kind of cool that they're going to try and do
Jet
that.
sounds like he's got something to say about this, so I wanna ask Jet in this segment.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a few things, just like a few quick things. So, like Ian said when we heard about the banner, I actually didn't hear it from you guys first. I heard it from my parents. I just want to kind of bring something up. It's like we talk about Neil Brown a lot, and we kind of talk about him as more of like an entity of a coach. I just wanted to bring up. I'm not defending him. 100%, I'm not defending him, but I'm just saying we gotta keep it in mind that he is a human with a family at the same time.
That's a great point, because the main thing that has come up is, hey, this is a father with kids, and how would you feel if you were a father and you had to explain to your kids when you're driving out of your home, Daddy, why is your name up on that billboard and saying that you should lose your job?
Right.
I don't know how old his kids are.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
And the thing is if the thing is think about it this way: what if he had to uproot his whole life, in the sense of like his kids are established in the school, and it's not just like as easy as, oh, we're gonna fire him and he's gone. It's like he's got to uproot his whole life at the same time. But all I'm saying is I'm not defending his actions with coaching and such. Well, he has done a job, quote unquote, on doing that. I just find it that like at the football game, yeah, if you flew it over, that'd be pretty funny. But putting billboards outside of his house where like his family could see it and like his kids, I understand the appeal of like you'd say something like that on Twitter, like at the same time it's out for the whole world to see, which his children could see. And like we could be like, why is your dad his kids could be told at schools like, why does everyone want to fire your dad? At the same time as we're like we need to rehumanize him as a person while we're talking about this, because it's really easy to just go like, oh, I don't like this guy, he's horrible, oh, I don't like this. But it's really hard to say, hey, I don't like how he's doing this, but at the same time, think about it how he's a person, I'm not defending him. I'm not trying to like say, oh, his actions as a coach were great. They weren't. And admittedly, I can say they weren't. But at the same time, you have to put it in your head that like this guy's a real dude. He's real. We've seen him. He's real. He has a family, and like he's a person with his own life, living his life. If we were, it's just like there's different things that go with if you're like firing someone. If he was just a single guy, and like he had no family and he was the coach, we could just be like, fire him. What the hell? He can move. But if he has a whole family established in Morgantown, it's going to be a little bit difficult. And that's probably one of the sort of factors a lot of people who have that power to fire him are taking into effect.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's important to note, I know he doesn't want all the negative attention that he's getting. But, when you're a public figure, whenever you go out and do that, you are signing up for it.
It comes with the job.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if that's noted out in the contract or anything, but when you sign that, I mean, you have to know realistically what you're getting into.
I like that we brought Jid in for this segment, because he brought a good, viewpoint of it in. And so I'm not denying your, stance on it. I think that's very important. Neil Brown he's a guy at the end of the day, and he still needs to be treated like you would treat any other human being.
Yeah, in of itself, it's not really a stance. I'd say it's more like of a concept to keep in mind.
Yeah.
That everyone should keep in mind. Even if he's a public figure, you should keep in mind that like the people we see on the TV are still people too. They're not just things of entertainment.
Absolutely.
I rest my case. That's all I'm going to say about
No,
that. I could keep going on.
That's absolutely everything you said there was 100% right. So I do agree with you. It is important that we do, we should sympathize with him a little bit that, hey, this is his job. He's got a family. Like, there's more factors to this than just, hey, he's doing a terrible job at coaching. Let's fire him. But at the same time, like Matt said, you are making millions of dollars to coach. And I was arguing with somebody on Twitter about this.
I saw this, by the way.
I compared it to a politician. And I know Neil Brown's not a politician. He's a football coach, and there's differences to be had. But you sign up to be a politician, okay? You know that there are going to be people out there that don't stand with you and that are going to criticize your motives, your beliefs, the way you want to run the country, etc. And so you kind of have to say that, yeah, I am doing a bad job coaching football. What can I do to change that? And again, that's not taking anything away from what Jit said. It's important to know that, yeah, it is a guy that we're sitting here saying that should lose his job, so we need to, sympathize with him a little bit. But there's levels to it, is what I'm trying to say.
I watched Coos earlier today and his take on this situation, and I agree with him 100%. Neil Brown is a fantastic human being.
Absolutely.
He is an awesome guy. I think all of us here have had multiple interactions with him one-on-one, and awesome guy to talk to, family values, the whole 9 yards. He's awesome guy. But like you were saying, he's paid millions to perform a job for a fan base that arguably is one of the more passionate fan bases in all of world sports. Mm-hmm. And they want to see their team do well, and by any means necessary, they're going to voice their opinion. And I think if you're Neil Brown, you're a grown man, and you accept responsibility for what you've done, and you can get over that. Okay, so from Neil Brown's perspective, I understand he's a human, he's a guy, like Jit was saying, great guy.
Yeah.
But you got to take it on the chin. For his wife as well, I'm sure she's dealt with similar things. I mean, it probably hasn't been this bad before, but I know she's dealt with that sort of thing with him. And she's in it with him for the long haul. Obviously, they're married. But I feel like she can get over it, too. She can traverse the negativity with Neil. The only problem I have with it, like we were saying earlier, is his kids. Because his kids really don't know what's going on. I mean, they may know. Again, we don't know. But they're going to be asking him all these questions. They're going to be worried about potentially moving, finding a new job somewhere else. Because I do think if Neil Brown leaves here, he's going to find another job, rightfully. But they're worried about that, and then they're worried about their friends at school and getting bullied. I've heard they've got bullied. Now, I'm not sure if that's exactly true or not. But that's the one problem I have with the whole billboard idea is his kids. And that's why, me personally, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to do it the way that the donors did it. But the fact of the matter is they're expressing their voice. They have a right to express their voice.
That's pretty much how I feel about it. Like I said, there's levels to it. Agree or disagree, they have every right to do that. So there's not really much you can do about it.
Yeah, exactly. For you guys listening and tuning in on YouTube, make sure to comment. Let us know what you think about the whole Neil Brown situation, Jordan Lesley. Give us all your thoughts on it. Now let's move on to the quarterback room. We have a little bit of a controversy going on here that I think started in the Arizona game. Nicco Marchiol.
I think it started earlier than that, but
Nicco Marchiol coming in the Kansas State game. Not a great performance for him, but I feel like him and Garrett Greene sort of played on the same level in that game. It was just a bad game all around. The mojo wasn't right, and everything was just sort of up in space with that K-State game. But we move on to Arizona. Garrett Greene injury issue, doesn't start. Nicco comes in and throws a very accurate game, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's a pocket passer. Now I think he's a jack of all trades, which is fantastic, but you can see he has pocket ability. Mm-hmm. And like we were saying earlier on in the podcast, there are some things that he can do that Garrett can't. So I'll let you expand on this a little bit.
This was my third point to whether or not I would feel good about Neil Brown going into 2025. And it's Nicco Marchiol. From this point forward, there is no reason that Nicco Marchiol should not be the starter of this team. I think I have expressed in previous episodes that Garrett is a leader. He has shown that. He has heart, determination, hard work. Like, he is a great person. And I don't know how to say it. I want Garrett to be the starter, but the fact of the matter is, like I said, it's college football, and he has not he does, at this point of the season, he's not deserving to be the starter. And that sucks to say because I like Garrett, I like Nicco, and I thought Garrett would be the guy this year, and then Nicco would come in next year. But at this point in the season, I think it's time for Nicco. And this, I'm going to read out some of the stats. We can talk about it. On this year alone, like we talked about his game against Arizona. That was by far his best, 18 for 22. And not only his best, I would argue that is the best game by a quarterback in the past 2 years. And not necessarily just the yardage. And you could argue Garrett's game against Houston last year where he had close to 400, but he was not very efficient. In terms of efficiency, doing what you need to do to win the game, I think that was the best game. 18 for 22, 190-some yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. About as good as a game you can have from Nicco Marchiol. Whereas Garrett, almost every game this year has thrown a pick. He has only 56% on the season compared to Nicco's 70%. He's 9 touchdowns to 8 interceptions ratio, and Nicco is 4 touchdowns to 1 interception ratio. The 1 interception, I'm giving Nicco a pass. It was a 50-50 ball. You were down in the Penn State game. You kind of had to do it. And so
I don't count that one.
Yeah, it was kind of a throwaway interception. And I found this interesting too. Nicco is 28 for 40 on the season, 70%, like I said. But he also has 278 yards compared to 247 yards last year on 13 less completions. So he's throwing longer balls. And the epitome of it was this was the exact moment I thought that, okay, it's time for Nicco. And it was that pass to Traylon Ray. All season long, we have talked about Garrett not being able, he's not a pocket passer. And we said this, and we think that Neil's trying to make him a pocket passer. That's just not what he is. He is a scrambling quarterback first. Nicco is not. And I think Nicco fits Neil's system way better. He dropped back. He sensed the pressure coming from the right side towards his back, took a step forward, put a beautifully placed ball, about the only place you could put it for Traylon to catch it. And that was when I was like, okay, it's Nicco time. It's time for, I get that it's hard to say, okay, I'm putting you down as a quarterback too, and the backup is stepping up. I get that that's hard, but like we said, it's college football. Nicco is the future. I think we all thought that Garrett would take a step forward, and he just hasn't. He is playing, in my opinion, worse. He's 56% on the year compared to 52%. He's on pace for about the same yardage, but he's thrown 8 interceptions this year compared to his 4 last year. And I think that I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, and I want to get y'all's opinions on it too, but I think that Neil is about ready to do that as well. Like I said, I think the Jordan Lesley decision was to save his job, right? And so when asked at the previous 2, thank you, Mike Askey, again, for asking him this question. It was much deserved. He needed to hear this one more time after a great game by Nicco Marchiol. The past 3 times Neil has been asked about the quarterback situation and did Nicco deserve a chance to start. The first 2 times he shut it down immediately. The first one was, hey, did you think we needed a spark? Okay, it doesn't matter. Garrett's our starter. The second time was, did you see the 2 drives before the halftime? It doesn't matter. Garrett's our starter. This time it was, right now Garrett's not healthy, and I don't think it's fair to make that assumption with Garrett not being healthy. It wasn't a, hey, no, as soon as Garrett gets back, we're going to start him over Nicco. It was maybe there is a little bit of a quarterback competition going on, and if Neal needs to save his job, he just saw what Nicco did. I think it's Nicco time, and I think Neal he knows that it's Nicco time. And I don't know how true this is. I know there is a lot of differing opinion on how reliable this guy is as a source, but the Voice of Morgantown on Twitter today posted that Garrett has had multiple what he heard. So this is technically secondary, third information, but from what he's heard, Garrett has had multiple concussions and might not be able to return to the season, and he's only being reevaluated in a couple days. And I don't think the second part is true. I'm not even going to read that. But if that's true, Nico's playing better. If Garrett is having concussion problems, I almost think that it's better for Garrett to consider long-term health too. He's a scrambling quarterback, and he's going to take hits. If you're dealing with multiple concussions, there's only 4 games left in the season. If I'm Garrett, I would consider it. That's not my decision, but I'll open the floor for y'all boys. I know I was talking for a while.
What do you got, Matt?
Ooh, did you hear that? That's my arm. That's my arm.
Sounds like you need to consider long-term health.
Well, maybe I do. Hey, I don't play football.
So, I think obviously we think relatively highly of Garrett Greene. He's a fantastic athlete. We haven't seen out of him what we were hoping for and maybe even expecting this season. But to talk about Nicco, I just was looking around while you were talking. I was looking around at some of the other quarterbacks, just nationwide, and just comparing stats. Now, Nicco has not played very much. Obviously the Arizona game the whole time, but he hasn't started, correct? Hasn't started otherwise?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. And he really has only gone in for maybe, 1 or 2 snaps, depending on, the situation. So statistically, there's a law of averages. As you have a larger and larger sample size, you'll regress towards the mean. So whatever his averages should be, it sounds like we're going to see more of him. And honestly, he's done really well, so why not? But, as the season would go on and then next year, assuming he's the starter or whatnot, we're going to see more and more realistically what we should be able to expect out of him. So again, we haven't seen a whole lot of him, so we don't know exactly how well he'll play. But just looking at some of the other quarterbacks,
But I would argue that a 70% on 40 completions, that's a decently sized sample.
Let's look. So Cam Ward from the University of Miami,
Heisman candidate.
very strong Heisman candidate. Completion percentage versus conference teams, 64.6%. Nicco, 69.4%. If you look at the rating versus the conference teams, 151 versus Nicco at 168.2. He has a higher rating versus conference teams than Cam Ward, than Dylan Gabriel, and even Shedeur Sanders.
Which, like you said, is, a small sample.
Very small sample
We're not going to
size.
say that.
And I'm not saying, oh my gosh, guys, Nico's going to win the
specify.
Heisman.
We are saying that Nicco Marchiol is Dylan Gabriel.
He's
You
winning
should
the Heisman.
probably
That's what we're saying.
Actually, he's
specify.
better. Yeah, right.
You should probably specify before they think that we're saying Nicco
Well,
is better than Dylan Gabriel.
I feel like I'm being very clear, and I'll just clarify one more time here. Nicco has a very small sample size. So far, what he's done is doing very well. Going back to completion percentage, it's higher than Cam Ward's, very slightly lower than Dylan Gabriel's. Shedeur Sanders is at 75%, which is pretty fantastic.
Shedeur's off the charts.
But you could even look at his rushing yards. His rushing yards on the season, he averages, and I lost where I had it, but I think it was 6.5 per carry, which is higher than
6.2.
6.2, you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's higher than C.J. Donaldson's average of 4.5, and Jaheim White's.
No, I'm sorry.
5.8.
That was Garrett's. I'm on the wrong page. He's averaging 3.3 this year. You're tripping.
All right, I may have misread that somewhere. But, looking at the rushing yards, that's 3.5 at Arizona. Against Oklahoma State, he was averaging 6.6. I'm going to skip Kansas because I believe that was a dropped snap.
Yeah, he only played one snap that game.
And we can ignore Albany because, it really wasn't the caliber of team. It wasn't the same caliber of team
Go
that we've
Danes.
seen here. But, decent rushing as well. So very solid quarterback. And like we're saying, it's low sample size. I would love to see more of him. So that's where I stand on that.
So are you saying yes, Nicco needs to start Cincinnati, or no, Nicco needs to not start Cincinnati?
Well, so considering I think head injuries are very serious, and I honestly don't believe. I mean, you can see like in the NFL how they're moving away from things like with the new kickoff rule.
And the Guardian caps.
Yeah, and I like both of those things. I mean, the kickoff rule is weird because that's not what you're used to. But, in terms of safety, that needs to be paramount. So I like how they're moving towards that. I'm interested to see how, collegiate sports move. They might not make the same decisions. But I definitely think we need to take a really long, hard look at the health of the players. And if Greene has had multiple concussions, very serious issue that we need to consider. I mean, I know if I was playing football and I had a concussion or multiple concussions, I know I'd throw in the towel because that's something that's going to really, really affect you for the rest of your life.
I think we can all agree that Garrett is not an NFL quarterback. As much as I love him, I don't think he's an NFL quarterback.
I don't think he is either.
And you have to think about health.
Yeah, and even let alone the health and let alone the skill set, his height is not great. Because, he's on the same level of a Kyler Murray, honestly. I mean, height-wise.
Yeah.
But Kyler Murray is just so much quicker than him. Kyler Murray has a different speed. And also, the entire system in Arizona is built around Kyler Murray scrambling out of the pocket and throwing balls across his shoulder and across the other side of the field. I don't think Garrett has that skill set.
Well, I think that is his skill set, but Neil's not letting him use it. He wants him to be a pocket passer.
Well, I'm saying in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Neil's fault that he's not getting to the NFL because he can't get the stats.
I don't know.
Well, I don't want to say that.
No, I'm not saying that.
But for me, I personally feel Nicco should start Cincinnati.
I think he's earned it.
Yeah, definitely.
He came out and showed that he can play the position very well. So
at the very least, I think he deserves to start there. And if he struggles against Cincinnati, then Garrett comes back in. And
I agree.
I stand by Nicco as the quarterback and Garrett come in for run plays. Not necessarily run plays, but RPOs.
sure.
If you've watched Penn State games, I mean, obviously we'll watch one at the beginning of the season versus us. But if you watched any other Penn State games, you know that there a lot of times they bring in Bo Perbula for Drew Aller because Bo is more of a runner. And so why not have Nicco be your starter? Bring Garrett in for RPOs. And I'm not saying, have Nicco be the quarterback, bring Garrett in for one snap and then take him back out. Have Nicco start. If he's having a rough drive, bring Garrett in, have him take a drive, make it an RPO style, pushing the pace, what he's good at, bring him back out, Nicco goes back in, unless Garrett absolutely torches the defense.
Yeah, and I've never understood why when you have two high-quality quarterbacks on your team, I don't know why we haven't been doing that just in terms of swapping them out. Not necessarily even what plays we're calling, but as a player, you're going to know what the play is. You're going to know what the call is. You're going to have your spot and you're going to do your job. I don't see why it would be difficult to say, it's not like you have to sit there and say, well, who's throwing the ball this time? It doesn't make sense not to use all the talent that you have on your team.
The only thing I think is it could be in terms of lefty-righty. Garrett's right-handed, Nicco's left-handed. So switching them out possession-wise could be difficult for the receivers and tight ends to adjust mid-game.
I don't know. I mean, especially at a distance, the ball's coming in essentially the same angle.
Fair enough.
Really, I mean, I don't know. I'm not super into the nitty-gritty of how the plays go, but I feel like it shouldn't be a huge difference.
It can be a little bit more than you think, but if Nicco plays like he did against Arizona, there's no reason he shouldn't get the start against Cincy.
Yeah, for me, I'm glad you guys brought up all the stats, by the way, because I fully stand behind the stats and saying why Nicco should start Cincy. again, I'm all for the stats, but also I want to talk a little bit about the eye test. Because when I was watching the Arizona game, there really wasn't a time that I could remember where Nicco dropped back to throw in the pocket and I felt uncomfortable about what decision he was about to make. Watching all the games with Garrett dropping back into the pocket, I felt a little uneased at what decision he was going to make because at least once per game, there was a throw that we all just threw our hands up and we're like, what was that? Like, where was the ball supposed to go? Like, what was he looking at? Could he see over the O lineman, which is another thing about his height?
Well, there was just several things like that. One, he was going through his reads. Nicco, I remember watching several times. He starts left to right. Well, yeah, left to right. He started left, made his reads. Like on the last play to Jalen Anderson. That's not his first read. He's reading, Jalen Anderson. If that's Garrett back there, I don't even think Garrett makes it to the read of Jalen Anderson. He takes off under pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
And the same thing can be said about the one to Traylon Ray. If Garrett senses that pressure from behind and to your right, I think Garrett takes off. I don't think that he stays in the pocket to make that pass. Whereas Nicco dropped back, sensed pressure, stepped up, made a throw. And then the other thing was, it almost seems like there's so much pressure on Garrett that he's so tense in the game, whereas Nicco went out there and just had fun. I think we've all seen the clip where he's just blah.
Yeah, he's just making the little face on the
Sorry for that noise, by the way. That was
right before the Huddy Tuddy.
That's crazy.
Need
Right,
that as a soundbite.
Right before the Huddy Tuddy pass.
Okay, we're gonna put that in.
It was right before the Huddy Tuddy pass, right?
Yeah, I think it was right before
They were going for it on 4th and goal.
And he was just happy, like having so much fun out there. And I think that's important. If you don't, I play a lot of basketball, and guys I play with that like have a bad game, I'll tell them a lot of the bad decisions or shots that you're making in basketball is not about the skill level. It is about you overthinking. Okay, when you're like in a move and you start overthinking it, like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do? It doesn't work. But when you're just going out there having fun, using muscle memory, and you're just like, hey, I'm about to go crazy. And you go tween behind them. And, it just, the fun of it takes over, and you're just playing basketball. And so I think the same thing can be applied here, where Garrett feels so tense that he's like, I've got to make this throw. Like, there's no other way. And whereas Nicco, he's dropping back. He's like, man, that wide receiver's wide open. I'm about to bam on the dot.
You definitely sound like a 2K YouTuber right now.
Oh, sorry.
You sound like someone who plays basketball video games but has never touched a basketball.
I play basketball, guys. I promise.
It's true.
You're in your
smell him
basketball
right now.
attire right now.
Yo, that's crazy, man.
my
That's
gosh.
crazy.
You're in your basketball attire right now. You just got out of a game a couple hours ago, so that explains that.
Which you won. Congratulations.
Let's go.
Yeah. All right.
Shout out you, Jimmy. You made the shot. That was the coldest shot I've ever seen. If you watch, shout out to you.
You gotta send him. You gotta send it to him. He might not know to watch.
I'll send it to him.
America, feel free to share.
America ought to know to be watching the podcast.
Share the
by
podcast,
now.
everyone.
Oh my gosh.
It helps us out tremendously.
Yes, definitely. And for you guys watching now, leave your comments on what you think about the quarterback situation. We love to hear it. So. All right, now we are going to move on to our own homebrewed top 25.
Got some feedback. They wanted it again.
Yes. So we have brought it back due to popular demand. We have brought back our top 25 list.
Controversy warning?
Probably. Also, before we start, not to brag, but my preseason title favorite was Oregon. And after watching the first 2 games of the season, I wanted to change my pick because Oregon, while they won their games, didn't win them convincingly. They didn't look great. Dylan Gabriel didn't look great. But here they are sitting at number 1 in the AP.
And looked good, too. Beat Illinois handedly, won against Ohio State.
And now they're sitting at number 1 at the top of our list.
Mine was Georgia, and I still think it is Georgia. I do think Georgia's the best team in the country that just had a tough time winning in Tuscaloosa.
Mine was Texas. I think if you think about the top 3 teams, I think there's a good argument for any of those 3.
Could go any way. Top 25.
All right, here. So we got Oregon number 1. This is what's listed right now. Oregon number 1, Penn State 2, Miami Hurricanes 3, Georgia 4, Ohio State 5.
No Texas. Notice that no Texas is there.
Do you want me to go ahead and run through all?
Just run through them like we did last time.
All right. Number 6, BYU. Iowa State right behind. Number 8, Indiana. Well-deserved Indiana. Number 9, Texas. And number 10, Texas A&M. 11 through 15, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Pitt, Boise, Kansas State, respectively. 16th, SMU, Clemson 17th, Washington State 18th, Alabama 19th, LSU 20th, Ole Miss 21st, Army 22nd, Illinois 23rd, Colorado 24th, and rounding out at the number 25 spot, we have Navy midshipmen.
So this is mostly my list with some input, but I know there's some disagreements. So let's start at the top because I know that's where it started. Let's not focus as much on Miami because this happened last time.
Yeah.
But we can talk about it.
Same as last time. Miami's too high. They've barely won half of their games. I know they're undefeated. That's all I'll say. They're totally fine in the number 3 spot, but I don't think I'd put them that high.
I will stand by if you are expected to be a top 10 team and you have won all your games, regardless of how, not necessarily how easy the schedule is, because I don't think Miami's had a good schedule. I stand by Florida being better than what they are leading on, and they beat the crap out of Florida in Florida. So that, I think, is their signature win. I think Miami deserves to be there.
They're definitely a strong team. I think they're at least number 5. So I'm okay with them being number 3. But that's
going off of my Oregon conversation, the fact that they barely won their first couple games sounds a lot like Miami when we consider the Virginia Tech game especially. By that logic, I think Miami deserves top 5. It's an undefeated record. Their schedule isn't easy. Top of the ACC, probably will win the ACC.
The big thing is above Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas, those all 3 being one-loss teams, and their losses being to, obviously, Georgia's to Alabama, Ohio State's to Oregon by 1 point, and Texas to Georgia. So it's all of their losses are to highly ranked teams, but I value winning. And I think that, like I said, if you're expected to be a top 10 team, you have the talent to compete at a college football playoff level, and you've won all your games, you've done what you can. I go back to the Florida State thing from last year. Florida State was deserving of that spot. This is a ranking, not a rating. I'm not saying Miami would beat Georgia in a game, but they deserve to be ranked higher, just like Florida State deserved to be in over Alabama, even though I think Alabama would have beat Florida State.
By that logic, I don't have an issue with it. Me personally making lists, I go off of the JP poll ideal of teams, whether if they face off one-on-one, who's going to win in a neutral ground, on a neutral ground. I feel like, personally, that's the way I would rank. Not everybody likes to do it that way, but judging off of Tyler's way, I'm okay with it. I don't hate Georgia at 4. Ohio State seems to sort of just be shifting everywhere. I mean, they have that one loss to
I have them at
Oregon.
5 because they don't have a signature win, but they lost on the road by 1 point to the number 1 team in the country currently. That's why I think they're still there. But if you notice, I dropped Texas a lot farther, because outside of the Georgia game where they looked very outclassed, they have no other signature win. Their best win is the Michigan win, which we now know is not very much of a win at all.
Yeah. Up towards the top of the list here is where we're going to have the most disagreements.
Yeah.
But I can get behind everything that's going on here. So moving on to the 6 through 10 spots, we got to put more respect on BYU and Iowa State's names.
And Indiana.
Indiana, yeah. Where are they at in the
They're
AP?
they're below 10. I'll pull up the AP
That's
now.
blasphemous.
Yeah, for real.
Oh man,
I think they're 13, maybe. Yeah, 13.
they're
They're 13th.
behind Clemson. Oh my gosh.
Like there is no reason. I get that they don't have like a signature win, but they just beat up on Nebraska, who kept a close game with Ohio State.
Dude.
There is no reason. Kurt Signetti, Google him, he wins. He deserves to be up there. So I think Iowa State is by far a top 10 team, and I have them 8th.
Or Indiana.
What'd I say?
Iowa State.
Oh, my fault. Both of them apply.
Iowa State 7.
It applies for both.
Yeah, exactly. I've always sort of thought going through this season, while both teams have remained undefeated, that BYU looks more impressive to me. Maybe it's just the eye test.
I think. What were you gonna say?
I didn't start to speak, but you go ahead.
I thought. Well, you like took a breath inward, so I thought you were gonna go like a.
I'm thinking.
Talking. Okay,
ahead.
fair enough. BYU, Iowa State, Indiana. Any order I think is fair. I have BYU above Iowa State because they have a really big win over Kansas State, who's currently ranked. So I think they take the top spot, and then Iowa State had the one win against Iowa, who was ranked at the time, and Indiana does not have a ranked team win. So that's why I did that in that order. BYU has 2. Sorry, they also have beat SMU. So I think BYU deserves the top spot. Iowa State, Indiana, kind of interchangeable. In anywhere in that 6, 7, 8 spots is.
Yeah, and then another weird spot. I think we can agree Texas A&M with their one loss coming to Notre Dame. And then the rest of their schedule up to this point, they deserve a top 10 spot. Like it is what it is, and they're currently leading the SEC, right? Like they're at the top of the conference.
Yep.
Yeah. So Texas Tech, I think we all can agree, deserves that top 10 spot.
A&M.
A&M.
Dude, I swear we're on the same wavelength.
I just want to say
Texas themselves.
I just want to say Texas way too low. I think we're right in putting them out of the top 5, and They are a one-loss team. How can you put them above, BYU, Iowa State, Indiana, Georgia and Georgia and Ohio State are in the same boat, standings-wise, or not standings-wise, but record-wise. Just depends on where you end up and who you end up with. Georgia's only losses against Alabama, who we have way down the list here. I don't know. The top 10 teams, it's like you could put them in one of those like bingo rollers and have them pop out in any order. It's tough, but I'm okay with how it is just because they have a loss. But to look at the caliber of team, not to say that anybody else up there is bad, but to look at the caliber of team that Texas is, maybe the most talented team in the country this year, and to have them 9 is just crazy. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's crazy.
So the reason I have them 9-1 is because we need to put some respect on BYU, Iowa State, and Indiana. They are for real.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing.
No, I know. But the reason I have them 9, whereas I have Georgia and Ohio State at 4 and 5, they're one-loss teams, and I have them above those 3 at 6, 7, and 8. Whereas Texas is a one-loss team, and I have them below. Is Georgia and Ohio State. Georgia beat the number 1 team in the country at the time. And Ohio State only lost by 1 on the road to the number 1 team in the country currently.
Right.
Whereas Texas didn't compete with Georgia, regardless of what the final score said. It felt so much further than 30-15. And outside of that Georgia game, they don't have a win to where it should push them above, in my eyes, BYU, Iowa State, Indiana. Their best win is Michigan, and as we said, Michigan isn't really a great win.
Even
now.
looking back to then, when Michigan, I don't remember. I know they were ranked at the time, right?
They were 10th.
I think something like that.
I think even then, looking back, I didn't think that was going to be much of a game, just because Michigan had lost so many of their production. Obviously, now we're seeing they may have fallen farther than we expected. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, this is how the top 10 is going to be, unless you have a couple teams that are far and away better than everyone else, and we don't have that this year. It's just kind of crazy.
I disagree.
You can roll the dice.
I think we do have that this year.
And you
but
think
it's more about everybody beating up on each other.
Well,
as of right now, if we scroll down some, Alabama, we have them at 19.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the head-to-head, Alabama beats Miami. That's a 16-spot difference.
I think so too.
But it's about the fact that Alabama is in the SEC and is just getting beat up on. Vandy and Tennessee both beat them. Georgia beat Texas. Texas is a one-loss team. Ohio State lost to Oregon. So all these good teams with conference realignment, they're beating up on each other now. And so although I think there's a severe talent difference in Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, that we have 19, 8, or 20 and 21, and BYU, Iowa State, Indiana 6, 7, and 8, Iowa State, Indiana, and BYU have all proved, hey, we are good. We have played the teams we have and beat them, whereas Alabama, hey, we might be in a stronger conference, but we've lost 2 games. What did I say? Alabama? Did I say it right?
Alabama's lost 2.
Yeah. Alabama's lost 2 games. Just because they're in a tough conference, that doesn't mean they should get, a pass. SEC bias, I hate it.
That is horrible. And I mean, look at the whole top 25 we have. There's not a single bad team up there. There's not even a team up there that's less than very good this year.
There's a couple.
In my opinion. You think there's teams up there less than very good?
Yeah. I think there's teams up there that West Virginia would beat in a head-to-head. Navy, Colorado, maybe not Colorado. Navy, Army, Washington State are all teams I think West Virginia beats in a head-to-head.
Maybe Pitt after a defensive realignment.
Yeah, Pitt at home, or just, if Neil Brown would play call aggressively. So
that's what's all about rankings.
It is hard.
it's tough.
So 11. Do we want to talk about A&M? Because the poll has them above Notre Dame. I have them.
A&M.
Poll has them below Notre Dame.
A&M has 1 loss, correct?
To Notre Dame.
The
first game of the season.
Right.
1 below.
That was a sticky one that we had a lot of conversation when we were making this list. If you want to start off talking about that.
But Notre Dame's loss was to Northern Illinois.
I think that's what drops them.
That's not on the list. Very far not on the list.
Yeah. And I think both teams have gotten better as the year went on, but I think Texas A&M jump from where they were at the beginning to now, whereas Notre Dame's from where they were at the beginning to now, A&M's has been significantly better. And as far as strength of schedule, Notre Dame has not beaten anybody outside of A&M, whereas A&M has had, an SEC schedule. So
sure.
SEC bias, but I know. But it's hard to do.
Ignore the conference they're in. It's just the quality of the teams that you come up against. So, yeah.
I don't believe in a quality loss, okay? If you lose the game, tough.
Then all of the undefeated teams should be first, and then you start with the 1-loss teams.
You bring up a good point.
Would we have said that Liberty would have made this list before their loss to...
Yeah.
Was it Kennesaw?
Kennesaw State, yeah.
Kennesaw State Liberty might have been on here.
Hey, Dad, I know you're watching. That's your alumni. Congratulations.
Dude. That was her first ever win against FBS team, huh?
I think so.
Yeah. What did they start? 0-7, 0-6, something like that?
That's the come up. That's the come up season that this nation needs.
I'm telling you, my dad was texting me mid-game. He's like, "What is going on?"
But that's what's weird about the ranking system, man, because now I don't think Liberty will even sniff the AP again.
Oh, absolutely not.
But if they would have beat Kennesaw, they probably would be up here over Navy, because Navy lost to
Notre
Dame. Okay. But yet they're still up here because I know you weren't talking about quality loss, but that was a quality loss.
I take back what I said. There is a thing as a quality loss. Some losses are worse than others, but I don't think I value wins more than I value losses. I should have said that. That's what I should have said.
Looking at Boise. Boise is a dark horse. Boise is a dark horse to get a top 4 spot.
I was talking to you all, and I said there is a scenario where Boise gets the first round bye. Because right now you see Kansas State is, they're 2 or 3 below in the regular AP, but in ours we have them below Boise State. Let's say Kansas State wins the Big 12 and still remains below Boise. Boise gets the 4th seed bye. So that could be an interesting play out where the Big 12 doesn't get that first round bye and the conference champion is ranked 5th through 12th.
Yeah.
That would be something.
And Boise has the best player in college football on their team.
Dude,
everyone wants to watch Boise.
The fact that I saw people saying that he had a bad game against UNLV, one of the best run defenses in the country, and he still went for 130 and a touchdown?
130 and a tutty.
Near 130 and a tutty. That's not a bad game.
Not at all.
That's a good game. And the fact that that's his worst is ridiculous.
I think Boise could be higher depending on who they played. For example, we have Texas losing to Georgia. Boise's only loss is 2.
Oregon by 3.
So,
well, the difference is Boise is in a Group 5 conference, so the talent that they're playing compared to Texas isn't.
Again, strength of
there.
schedule. But they had a closer loss to the number 1 than Texas did to Georgia, who was not even number 1 at the time.
I agree, but I'm saying that
Not to say
Yeah.
we're going to move them around or anything, but just something to consider.
we
Then-
said it was going to be controversial, man.
Yeah. Talking about strength of schedule as well, AP had Clemson 11th. We have them 17th.
A 6th drop. Wait, did they really have them 11th?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm looking at
Tied.
I mean, they
tied
haven't
with
beaten
Iowa
anybody,
State
and they got
because-
stomped by Georgia.
And this
Yeah.
is something that I don't like about the AP Top 25. They still have 25 spots, but there's 2 people in spot 11,
What are we doing? What are we doing, Associated Press?
which, I mean, they don't have a spot 12, but still. It just doesn't make any sense.
There needs to be an objective way to rank teams. There has to be. BCS did it, kinda.
that was a weird format.
Kinda.
BCS was a weird format.
I think we just need to weight the games based on how big you win by, multiply that by some factor of how strong the opponent is, yada, yada. And eventually you could, you know.
I get you.
It's hard. It is hard to do.
Looking at the rest of the list, Kansas State, I think they belong up there. Solid 6-1 team.
You wanted to argue Kansas State, so
I
I'll
did
give you
want
the
to argue
floor.
Kansas State. Kansas State, very solid
And
football
Pitt.
team. I would move Pitt down below Kansas State. I am not a football hater. I don't look at the what do they call it? Royal blue and yellow. What do they say? I don't know.
Pitt?
I'm not a Pitt fan. I don't know what they say their colors
Of course, we're not Pitt
but
fans, Matthew.
But I'm not a hater. I don't look at
Did
that
you say
team.
Matthew?
Yeah, man.
Where's his dad?
I don't
or
look at
mom
that team.
coming out.
I'm not a
He's gonna
hater.
pull out the full name.
I don't look at that team and go, oh, I hate Panthers, whatever. Their football team, they don't have the schedule. I'd say the same thing about them as I said about Miami.
Bro, then
They don't have a
Texas should be
strong.
lower.
They don't have a.
Who is Texas beat?
Yeah, but Texas is a good team.
So is you have
I think
nothing
Pitt
to
is
say
a
that
good
Pitt
team.
isn't.
Pitt's a solid team, but they're not on the same level as Texas, and
Yeah,
I don't
that's why
know.
they're lower.
I don't know that they're on the same level as anyone else in the 5 around them. I would definitely put them at least below Kansas State.
No.
Kansas State has lost how many games?
One.
To who?
BYU.
Who we have number 6.
What did I say earlier? I said I value wins more than losses.
I know.
BYU has
But
8 wins.
what am I saying?
Kansas
And
State
also
has
looking at
7
our
wins.
list, that Kansas State loss was a quality loss.
Yeah,
It's a
are you
quality
gonna
loss.
call it a
Yeah,
qual-
so move Kansas
quality
State up.
loss? Wait, who lost to Kansas State? What are you talking about, Willis?
What?
Everybody else.
Did you know?
No,
Everybody
we're saying
else.
we're
Pitt
saying move
deserves to be
Kansas
up there.
State. I'm not saying they deserve to be knocked down. I'm saying Kansas State should be higher, which
Why?
by definition,
Why?
they are out of
Why?
Because they have a better schedule and they've done
Who?
better against
Who?
better teams.
Who? Who is Kansas State beat?
Us.
Bro,
Which
we're
right
so
now-
good.
yeah,
all right,
you
look at the
can't call
head-to-head.
us a good
You want
win.
to talk about head-to-head? Kansas State beat us by a crap load. Pitt only beat us because we need a defensive realignment.
Okay, but again, it's not
At the
about
end of the
who the
game.
better team is. If that were the case, Alabama would be higher than well, I'm not going to say Indiana.
Alabama would be up there.
It is impossible to gauge who the better team is without them playing on the field. Okay, beginning of the season, nobody would have expected Vandy to beat Alabama, but they did. And
I
you
think the
can't
most
say that
practical-
Alabama's better than Vandy, because Vandy beat Alabama.
I think the most practical, without getting into the nitty-gritty of every single statistic for each team, is to look at their schedule, look at who they've played and how they've done against it. And if there's same teams have been played, like how we played both of those teams, I think you can look at that as an indicator.
It is an indicator, but you know what else is an indicator? Pitt's 8-0. Well, 7-0, 8-0. What are they?
I don't know.
7-0,
7-0.
and Kansas State's 7-1. Tough.
Okay. So they've played one more game.
So,
That means
and they lost it.
they did.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, Pitt's
man.
losing this weekend, so we'll drop
Listen,
them
that's Pitt should lose this weekend.
Looking at the rest of the list, we got Alabama and LSU at 19th and 20th, which I honestly kind of agree with. We're removing the SEC bias from our list.
Well, not entirely.
SMU
You could drop.
Clemson. SMU Clemson was a big change. Clemson. The AP has at number 11, tied for 11. SMU they have at 20. We have SMU at 16.
17.
Excuse me, SMU
SMU's at
16.
16, so they went up and Clemson went severely down.
Yeah,
But Clemson has not beaten anybody with a pulse.
and SMU
And they
has
got
done
stomped by
pretty
Georgia. Yeah, SMU's only loss is to BYU.
Right, and it was a close loss. Quality loss, even.
Yeah, whatever. That's why they're higher.
Yep.
And
I like
then-
Washington State. Good 7-1.
Yeah,
Yep.
put some respect on them too. The fact that they were just now ranked is kind of.
Oh man.
Dude.
We're gonna keep going.
Okay,
It's
went
gone.
off. It went off. We're good. We're good. We're fine.
What a day.
Ole Miss, I feel like they are where they belong. And then you have Army, who is still undefeated.
Yep.
Did we said LSU's the best?
No, Alabama.
No, sorry. Alabama's the best 6-2. LSU, Ole Miss, they're all 6-2. I think in the correct order there. And we think, even though wins are more important and Army's undefeated, how do you put those three above them then?
Because Army has no quality loss. Or no quality win. Sorry, my fault. Y'all keep getting on to be about
Whatever you
quality
say.
loss.
Whatever you say, boss.
Okay, there's a difference because Army is, outside of Boise State, is the highest ranked group of 5 team that we have in there. And Army's schedule has played absolutely nobody, whereas Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, although they're 2 lost teams, they have lost to quality teams, and they have beaten quality teams. LSU beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss, who'd they beat? I don't know Ole Miss schedule. Alabama beat Georgia. So, yes, wins matter, but strength of schedule also matters. A ranking is an important compilation. Sure.
Compilation.
Of, all of these things considered, how they are expected to be, what their record is, strength of schedule, their talent on the team, what conference they're in, even though I'm saying no SEC bias.
I think there is a very strong case that Illinois is higher because
Dan?
let's talk about it first. They are 6-2. Their losses are to the number 1 and number 2 team.
Yep.
Now, Oregon blew them out. Penn State, it was, I watched that game. It was a good game, but it just kind of got away from them. They just couldn't quite get to score. The rest of the games have been pretty solid from them. Purdue, they beat in overtime by 1 point. That was probably their
Worst win.
Yeah. So I don't know. Very strong case.
There's a lot of tension coming from over here. You haven't had much
Do you think
to say.
tension? You think tension?
Well,
just
you know what I mean.
I like listening to your guys' perspectives on this because, like I said, my philosophy of a tier list is a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, you did say that. Well, there's a difference between a ranking and a rating. The moral of the story is, how should rankings be determined when it comes to college football playoff? Should it be who the best team is or who deserves to be there? And the reason I have a problem with who the best team is because unless they've played in a head-to-head, you have no, what am I trying to say here? You have no way to say that one team is better than the other. Like, sure, we can say that Alabama and Pitt, if they played, Alabama would beat Pitt. But until they play, you can't know for a fact.
Just some statistical analysis. I do think Illinois could be higher. It's tough to say where. Going back to that, looking at Ole Miss's schedule, they lost to Kentucky and they lost to LSU, and LSU was a close game. So if they're better than Ole Miss, they could be better than LSU. I don't know if I'd put them above Bama though.
Illinois?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Hold on.
They've been solid.
Their best win? What would you say their best win is? I
Let's
think
look back
Ole
here.
Miss, Alabama, LSU's best wins are all better than Illinois' best win. Probably Nebraska, right? Michigan.
Yeah.
Well,
Nebraska or Michigan.
I think Nebraska is better than Michigan.
and it was
if
kind
they
of a
win the season.
close game with Kansas too. It was within a score. So
I don't hate any of the positions at the bottom. Little
No.
controversy. Colorado, I think they deserve to be where they are.
I think they deserve to be in the top 25. Yeah.
There's so much parity this year.
Even though you heard Deion Sanders is like, don't rank us. We don't want to be ranked. We want our backs against the wall.
Yeah, he wants he wants to keep the receipts, man.
Yeah.
I kept Navy
Attitude of the
ranked.
coach. Very, very solid.
Yo, Deion. We could use you.
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
man.
man.
Coach Prime coming to Morgantown in a few years, man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Navy I left in the top 25 because their only loss is to
Yeah. Navy's
Dame.
Navy.
Notre Dame, and I couldn't figure out who I wanted to put above them. Obviously, they have Missouri. Absolutely not.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's ridiculous. Who's the next best? 2 1-loss team. I've seen Memphis and Tulane in there. I still think Navy deserves it over Memphis because of the head-to-head, and then Tulane is a 2-loss team. Even though the 2 losses are to Power 4 opponents, they haven't really beaten anybody outside of that. So I think Navy is the last that should be in.
Yeah.
You know.
Even though in all of our hearts, I'm sure we would all love to see the Rutgers Scarlet Knights crack the
They're
top
done
25
for.
list. Oh,
They're
my gosh,
done
man.
for.
How do you start 4-0 and then lose 4 straight, man? Anyway, now, man, we're still on that list with them for not being ranked since 2019. Us and Rutgers, man.
Texas Tech.
And Texas Tech. All right, let us know what your guys' top 25 tier list is. Argue with us. Agree with us. Just comment. Just talk to us. Let us know. For this final segment, I want to make it really quick, just fun, off the top of the dome. Give your one realistic title winner as of right now, and then give a dark horse title contender. I originally was thinking, like, we should make it out of the top 25, like, choose a team out of the top 25, but I think at this point in the season, that's not realistic.
So you're saying pick who we think wins and then who we think is a dark horse?
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, my preseason pick was Oregon. I'm gonna stick with Oregon. I just want to stick with. I want to stick to my guns here now, which I'm kind of sure I may regret that, but I'm sticking to Oregon for the realistic title contender. Dark horse. I want to go for the horse mascot in Boise State, the Broncos.
That would be awesome.
That's who I was going to go with.
So-
I won't now, but that was who I was going to go with.
Don't steal my
Because I don't think anybody expected Boise State to the group of 5. I don't think anybody expected the group of 5 champion that gets in to be contending, but they showed on the road at Oregon that they can. So that's a good pick. My preseason was Georgia, and I'm going to stick with Georgia, like you, sticking with your original pick. I think Georgia's by far the best team in the country right now. Alabama, that loss to Alabama, it does get worse by the day when Alabama keeps losing, but I think it was a matter of, hey, Alabama came out really hot, and it was a tough environment to be in, and they just fell flat that day and still almost came back. So I still think Georgia's the best team in the country, and they will win it all. Dark horse to contend, I'm going to go Indiana. I think people are still, sleeping on Indiana, even though they're finally making, the fact that they're 8-0 and ranked outside the top 10 is just ridiculous. I think Indiana has a chance. They showed that against Nebraska, and then the following week, Nebraska nearly beat Ohio State. And put some respect on Indiana's game when it comes to contending against big boy teams. And I think we get a taste of that pretty soon. When do they play Ohio State? November 23rd, they play Ohio State. That is going to be a big game to tell.
I like the Indiana pick. I think Matt's cooking up
That's
something
solid.
over there.
Okay.
So
I picked Texas preseason. Man.
I don't think you should stick. I'm just going to be honest. I don't see Texas going all the way.
That's tough. There's a lot of solid SEC contenders. And, gosh, I don't know. Like, it's depending on... Yeah, it just depends on who gets to that game. I don't know. I'm going to stick with Texas. But at the same time, it's like
Well,
I feel like they're the most likely, but I won't say that it's probable.
So you think Texas makes it to the SEC championship, or do you think they're going to be an at-large? And then you think after that they make it through 4 rounds of playoffs?
I have to look
right?
I'd have to look at everybody's schedule before I would confidently say. But I think they get into the playoff one way or the other. I don't know. I mean, at this rate, A&M is going to the SEC championship. Who do they come up against? Do they win or lose? Yada yada. I don't know. I think at the very least Texas is at large.
Dude, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to watch it. We're on the road for the last game, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we get to watch this game.
Watch the Texas
Texas
A&M game.
versus A&M is going to be the
Wild.
best game all year.
Well, if Texas
stand
loses
by that.
If Texas loses that, they might be out of at large. But other than that, I don't know if I see them getting out of the playoffs.
Right now, I think the best game still is Georgia, Alabama, and then Ohio State, Oregon is in that contention as well.
Georgia, Bama. Watching that game
was so wild.
Was so great.
We're getting so sidetracked. So you're saying Texas
I think
to
I'm going to
win.
stick
Who's
with
your dark
Texas.
horse?
Dark horse is Vanderbilt.
No, stop
They
it.
went out.
Stop it.
They went out. They win the SEC championship because everyone else, kicks each other in the shins and falls over before the finish line. Vanderbilt comes in and sweeps.
You know what? I do want to say I don't hate it, even though I don't think it's happening. But the fact you brought up everybody beats each other up was a good point.
Mm-hmm. They have a very tough schedule. They got LSU and Tennessee are their last two teams.
Most of these teams have tough schedules left. Like an SEC schedule is not easy to get through. And so if you find that Tennessee, LSU, well, not LSU, if you find a way to, beat LSU, you said they play LSU still?
Yeah, LSU and then Tennessee are their last two.
Let's say they beat Tennessee and LSU. That gives them the head-to-head against LSU and Tennessee, even if they're tied at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Texas could find a way to lose 3. And then Georgia has still a tough schedule coming up to finish the season out. They could find a way to lose 2 more. And then that puts them in the SEC championship versus A&M. Or A&M could lose,
Sure. It's kind of a toss-up. It's hard to say who's even going to make it to the SEC championship. And then depending on, how you kick each other around, where do you stand for the at-large bid?
The fact Vandy has beaten
I think
Alabama
Vandy has to win the SEC to get in, though.
Competed with A&M. Or not A&M, Texas.
Texas.
Competed with A&M, and
it was close.
Wild. It was 27-24. That's crazy for Vanderbilt. So they have 2 games against 2 of the top teams in the SEC. Well, Alabama, say what you want. That's huge for Vandy. So if they can find a way, I don't hate it.
I think we should get a JIT pick on this subject.
Who you think the national pick is and national title pick is and who your dark horse is?
Go with someone you see on the list there, realistically. Or are you thinking a Florida team? Because I know you.
Ain't no way, brother. Well, Miami.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of say Miami, and then I don't know. I was thinking A&M. I don't know. I just had A&M in my head all day.
I like the A&M pick too. They need to have some respect too.
I heard someone playing the Texas A&M fight song, probably on my Spotify, because my high school's fight song was a Texas A&M fight song.
Oh,
I heard it today, and I was like, damn.
I
don't know, man. Just don't question
Sounds
me,
good.
man.
It's,
don't question
it's possible.
Fair enough.
This is
It
my
is possible.
This is my true and honest JIT pick. Okay.
Look,
I like it.
Much more likely
Miami's
than
a
a lot
solid-
of teams.
Yeah, Miami's a solid pick as well, so I'm not hating on that whatsoever. And then A&M for sure. They could win the SEC, get in there, get the bye. Very, very plausible.
Sleeping on Colorado? Are we sleeping on Colorado?
I'm sleeping on Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. We've been going for nearly 2 hours. We got to wrap it up.
Yeah, we know this is a bit of a longer episode, but I hope we gave you guys plenty to listen to, plenty to give us feedback on. So make sure when you're watching this video, like, comment, subscribe, share, get as many people as you can to subscribe to the channel. Follow our social medias. We got an Instagram, we got a Facebook, and we got an X or Twitter now. We are at Cold Country Show on Twitter, but at Cold Country Pod on Instagram and Facebook, just so you guys know. Make sure to go over there, show those accounts some love. So, yeah, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for us
Share
today.
the video and let us know in the comments if you want some more of the, national teams, not just West Virginia or Big 12. Like the Pick'ems we did today, Ohio State, Penn State, Tennessee, Kentucky. We did the top 25. Let us know if you want a little bit more stuff like that. And share the video.
Yeah, definitely.
Important.
Give us as much feedback as possible.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. From me, from Tyler, from Matt, from JIT. See you on the next episode.
Goodbye, America.